having you as a guest on the show was interesting because number one, I followed you. So I watched you kind of go from zero to hero, and you're crushing it out there in terms of the difference you're making in thousands of people's lives. I think that's very, very cool. I have, a long time ago, I came up with a quote that success is simple, significantly impact many people's lives every day.
Mm-hmm.
And it turned out to be that acronym. And what a difference that you can make in that industry called how do you support people in being healthy. And of course, there's the additional benefit of how do you support people in gaining and growing their financial futures and their financial health as well along the way. And all from water. And a lot of I think people understand the concept because it's certainly more mainstream in a conversation than it has been in the past. But you're really living it. I mean, you're saying, as to your point earlier, I mean, you're literally operating at a global scale, and you're working even in countries where you're bringing water that is seeing the difference. Now, I don't want to talk at a school, or can you give us a little bit of background, even how impactful it is in other parts of the world?
Yeah, it's so big. So I think part of what I want to really touch on with this conversation around the water is we've reiterated so many things over the years of how we deliver the message, how we deliver the product, how we deliver the opportunity, because I am a huge believer in sequence. Sequence really truly matters. And when we look at, the ingredients in a recipe, for example, if you try to cook a stew or a soup or bake a cake or bake some bread and you do it the opposite way of the instructions on the recipe, it will not look like bread. It will not taste like bread. So you have to follow the recipe. You have to follow the sequence. But with business and health and wellness, it's not so clear. Like, this is the recipe. It's a little bit more like, here's all the ingredients, figure it out for yourself. And everybody keeps trying to make the recipe work. So that's basically where I feel like one of my strengths has come over the last decade building this. Is I first started off face to face with people after that experience with my mom. And there's an important little segment there that I want to just mention also.
Mm-hmm.
Was because of my upbringing with the money piece and the limiting beliefs and the lack and scarcity that I grew up with. This machine is around $4,000 or $5,000, and it's a one-time purchase. So there's an important factor there with price versus cost, right?
Yeah.
Price is what you pay once, and then the cost is what you pay for the lifetime of how long that product or service lasts you. So in this case, you pay the price up front, but the cost is like pennies over the course of 15, 20 years. I still have the original machine from 15 years ago, and it's operating the same way. And so it's saved me so much money over that time frame of not buying bottled water and all the other products it replaces. So the point was that when I was thinking about selling a product for $4,000 or $5,000, like that was 4,000 times my net worth at that time. So I didn't feel worthy, right? I was like, who am I to sell something that is more money than I've ever seen in my life at one particular point in time at that point? So I had a really hard time wrapping my head around trying to sell it as a business or market it or whatever. And I was sabotaging myself. Excuse me. I was sabotaging myself because of those limiting beliefs around money. And so after we discovered the business model, about 6 months after we got the machine and the guy who we bought it from showed us the numbers and how it works, I had this deep burning intuition, like, this is it. I'm going to do something big with this thing, but I had no success with it. I tried to talk to people about it. Everyone made fun of me. Everyone said my mom is crazy and she got scammed. And I heard all the most negative stuff from everybody, but I knew that I believed in it because it changed my life personally. So no matter what everybody said, it wasn't impacting my belief in it, but I sort of got discouraged trying to talk about it. And then afterwards, me and my mom weren't really seeing eye to eye. It was that period of time where sometimes your parents feel like the enemy and you're just not really connecting and stuff. So me and my mom weren't really getting along, and I see it clearly now. She was right, and I was a fool at that age. So I'm sorry, Mom. I messed up, and she knows that. I've apologized many times. But I ended up moving out with $600 to my name, and 12 jobs that fired me was basically my non-existent resume. So I was kind of screwed. I had $600 to my name, had no skills, no formal education, no nothing that I could really rely on except for these random odd jobs that I had given to me, like pass me down jobs my whole life. And then I'm trying to look for work and no one would hire me because I have no references. So it was like this egg and chicken situation. I'm like, come on, man, give me a chance. And I stumbled into door-to-door sales. And door-to-door sales, I was selling telecom for one of the biggest companies in Canada called TELUS. And I was selling their TV and internet service. So mind you, I started to learn a skill set of communication, going to people's homes, giving them a deal. And I had to be like overcoming my own self every day because it was me versus me. It was like every day, the elements, it was raining, it was hot, it was cold, all the different things. And then it was like an opportunity door after door after door to improve my pitch, to get my message across, to give them a deal, all these things. So after doing this for 4 years, what happened that I didn't realize was that my money beliefs, my worthiness was shifting because I started to make more income in door to door. And I got it up to about 20 to 25,000 a month in commissions. And I thought I was rich, right? I'm like, I made it, man. I think I was 25 years old, no home, no kids, no responsibilities, no nothing except for $600 of rent, a cell phone, and I think like going out to get lunch. Like I had nothing, right? And I'm pulling in 20, 25K. I'm like, I'm freaking rich, man. I made it. But
Living
I
the
had no
dream.
freedom. And that was when I realized I didn't have freedom. And so the whole thing shifted from not having money my whole life to making money. Like, I got to make money. I got to make money. I got to solve the game of money, to all of a sudden stacking cash pretty quickly in the bank from this job and having nothing really to do with it at that point. And I remember wanting to take my girlfriend on a trip to Mexico. We hadn't really traveled anywhere together aside from like a Whistler for the weekend locally, stuff like this. And I'm like, man, like I feel like I really earned this opportunity to take my girl and kind of show her this nice week in Mexico and live it up. And we got this all-inclusive thing. It was like, I think $3,500. It wasn't even a lot of money necessarily for two people, but it was a big deal for me at the time. And so I took her there, and I remember trying to ask my boss at this door-to-door company if he would like give me the week off, right? And I remember him looking at me kind of like with disgust, like, who do you think you are asking for time off? That was his attitude. And I'm like, wait a second. And it just hit me like I felt like a slave. I felt like I had these handcuffs to this job, even though the money was pretty good. And that in the moment I made that decision, I'm like, put a little smile on my face. I'm like, oh, okay, my bad. Like, when can I go? Like, just totally bow down in the moment. And in the back of my thought, I'm like, man, never again. That made me feel so small, so insignificant, of like just being the master of my destiny and being control of my life. I'm like, never again. I got so angry. So anyways, so behind the scenes, after my door-to-door day ended, I was looking for these different business models and back to the water. So this is the funny story that I always share, is the water machine talks to you. And when you turn it on, it says, Kangen water 9.5. And it kind of says that to you. So every morning I'd wake up and I was kind of dreading going to the office to do my door-to-door thing. And I turn on the machine and I always hydrate about a liter of water in the morning first thing. So I'm standing beside the machine, keep slamming glasses of water, and it keeps talking to me. And I'm looking out the window. Man, if only there was a businessman that could, and it keeps saying Kangen water 9. And completely ignoring it. And then one day it all comes full circle. And I had a conversation with my brother. And he's like, dude, mom's been trying to build this business, man, for like 5 years. She's not really getting very far with it on her own. It changed your life. You believe in it. You now are good at sales. You're doing this door-to-door thing. You're making some good money, man. Why don't you work with mom? Why don't you set her up? Why don't you retire her? What's your deal, man? What's wrong with you? And he just calls me out. And everything he said, it was true. Everything he said was on point. Like, he nailed everything, but it was hard to accept it, right? I'm like, you're my little brother, man. Watch your mouth, kind of like that was my initial ego response. But then when I went to bed, I was like, man, he's right, man. Like, everything he's saying is true. So that was my decision to go back to the water. But the real distinction was the worthiness piece, because I had built that belief up. And I'm like, well, I'm a big baller now, right? I'm doing 25 grand a month. I can sell this machine for 4 grand. I believed in myself to go do that. And that was how things started. But I was still trying to sell the product. So it was very much water, health, like we're talking about so far on this podcast today. And what I realized was I was dealing with young people. people that were my age in their mid 20s. And I was doing these presentations talking about older people that have health issues, that are baby boomers, this kind of stuff, right? Because that was the company culture at that time. And all these people, I was losing them. Every single person, they're all like, man, I don't got no health problems. Like, I'm good. I'm energized. I'm an athlete. And so I realized that that angle of my story and my experience wasn't actually going to ever serve that younger audience. And that's how we started to innovate and have these different iterations that led us to today.
Well, that's such a great point too, because the reality of it is that when you are young, generally, most people are pretty healthy. It's not a point in your life where you're not feeling good. So I'm assuming along at that point, Balazs, you started looking at Kangen as a business opportunity for others. Now,
Mhm,
is the term, I don't even know, so this is a legit question from my point, is it
mhm,
still referred to as multi-level marketing, or what is it called these days? Because I don't know, because it is a bit of, that's what it was. I don't know what it
mhm.
is anymore. I really don't. But give us a little bit of background on what the business model is that you then stepped into.
Yeah, that's a great question. I think that there's elements of, network marketing, multi-level marketing, direct sales. There's a little bit of elements
Yeah.
of all of it in this business model, but
Mhm.
it really depends on how someone chooses to go about the business. Where someone who, for example, resonates with like an online attraction marketing or running paid traffic on social media, like ads that lead to a web page or a webinar or like an online presentation that leads to like this automated process,
Mhm.
that person is going to resonate more with a high ticket affiliate marketing angle. And it can be done that way.
Mhm.
Now, someone else might go, you know what, techie stuff isn't for me. I don't like the ads. I don't like paying money for that kind of thing. I actually love the face to face model, and I love the friends and family, or going and networking and meeting people at meetup.com or whatever, right? There's
Mhm.
other ways of doing it more traditionally, face to face, coffee shops, phone calls, and it works that way as well.
Mhm.
And that person's going to refer to it as direct sales,
Mhm.
right? Then you're going to have someone who might be more of a traditional person who's like, okay, well, I just want to build a downline and I want to recruit people for that intention, which is going to be more of a multi-level marketing um, I guess, approach, I guess. But they're all of them, depending on how you build it. The model itself, what I loved about it personally is that it was more like a franchise model, in the sense that you sell one of these machines and it becomes a profit center in your organization, and you make the commission on that transaction up front. And if
Mhm.
that person never sells a machine, is no interest in selling the machine, they just wanted the water and the health benefits, you still make a pretty good commission,
Mhm.
and that could be the end of it as a single transaction.
Mhm.
But in many cases, what happens is someone will purchase the water, drink it for 3 months, 6 months, 12 months, years, even, right? Like in my case, it was 5 years before I really built the business.
Yep.
And they own this distributor ID number that came with their machine for life. So at
Mhm.
any point, if they refer someone one day,
Mhm.
they will be compensated for the referral. And I find that really powerful, because you're building these locations in this global franchise, but it's sitting on someone's counter in their home as a health product that they use for everything: cooking, cleaning. I mean, think about what you use water for in your day-to-day life. It revolves around almost everything you do is connected to water in one way or another, right? Which is really powerful. So I saw the vision of, okay, if I can build this with a direct sales model approach, but then someone who puts their hand up and says, hey man, I want to take this thing seriously. Like, I really want to market this thing. I want to run ads to this thing. I want to build a network or build an organization. I was willing to work with those people. And so it's a bit of all of it. What I resonate with these days is high ticket direct sales, where I prefer to do things online. I don't actually hit up people that I know, or message people or DM people, hey, you want to have a look at this thing? That's not my style. I like people coming to me, and I primarily do that through social media marketing, content, lifestyle stuff, where people just ask me, like, how do you live this life, man? It looks like you got a lot of freedom. You spend lots of time with your family. How do you build it? And then I introduce them to the concept around the model itself. And then when they find out what the product is a little bit later in the process, it's logically, it makes sense. They're just like, cool, all these waters are not good for me. This makes sense. It's an asset that I'm buying. And that's kind of how we've been doing it in the last little while, last 5-6 years. And it's by far the best sort of sequence that we have found that works really effectively.